All right, I have 7:02. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Irvin?
Here.
Counselor Heinz? Counselor Lammerman?
Here.
Counselor Merriday?
Here.
Counselor Settlemeyer?
Here.
Counselor Wilson?
Here.
Mayor Solsby?
Here. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Items to be added to the agenda, I see none. We are going to go ahead and recess this regular city council meeting. And we're going to call to order the Urban Renewal Agency meeting. We do have 3 people signed up to speak on the urban renewal. Anyone wishing to comment in person or virtually during the appearance of interested citizens for items not on the agenda or action items on the agenda should sign up using the comment request form available. All right. Chief Wooten.
Good evening, everybody. Usually I'd be here to give accolades, but tonight I'm not. So as the city council proceeds with its debate on forming this urban renewal district, I'm not sure what you've been told, but I can tell you that on the current footprint, based on the numbers I've seen, this will cause significant financial harm to the fire district. I have polled the board and the board has directed me to inform the council we will not support this effort unless there are significant changes to the footprint or mitigation of the financial loss to the district. Why is this important? The ISO rating, for those of you that are not familiar, the district fought very hard to get an ISO rating of 2.4. It was 5.9. That is the second best ISO rating that you can get in the nation. How does that rating affect you and everybody here? It affects your homeowner's insurance rates. If we lose the ISO rating because we can't buy new fire trucks, which this very well has the potential to prevent us from doing, it would set apparatus replacements back by 10 years. If we can't buy new ambulances, if we can't buy new equipment, if we can't increase staffing, we're already out to the voters asking them to give us more money to put another ambulance on the road because we're running 16 to 20 calls a day. I sat in that fire station yesterday by myself for 4 hours. The impact of that to public safety is absolutely not acceptable. We're doing everything we can to squeeze every dollar to put more boots in seats and to respond to calls. This potential effort is going to handicap that and set us back significantly. $5 million over 30 years is no significant lackadaisical number to us. That averages to $165,000 a year. Based on the fact that we already pay the city $75,000 a year for a PERS bond debt that was never ours, that would be over $250,000 a year in lost revenue to the fire district until that bond is paid off, and then it would be $165,000 a year. We simply can't take that hit. We don't want folks to wait hours for an ambulance to get back here from Eugene, but that is the situation that we're in right now. Any loss to the district, financially or otherwise, is not acceptable, and it's going to force the district into a position of having to defend itself against the monetary damages. I would prefer to be partners. We've been partners with the city for a long time. I didn't even get the courtesy of a conversation over this one. I found out about it Friday after it got put on the agenda. Previously, people have come to the fire station and talked to me about it. Previously, in the MUPTI, we agreed that we would just bill the property owners for those properties. That can't work with this. It's just simply too big and too much money. So I urge the council to cautiously proceed as you consider these bylaws and as you consider the size and scope of what I'm just going to call the monster and the impact that it's going to have to the men and women that serve the people in this community. And it's not just Cottage Grove. We serve 33,000 people. We also serve the city of Cresswell. It will affect service across our entire fire district. So as you proceed, I just urge you to take caution and consider that we need to be able to get where people need us to be in a timely fashion, not 2 hours after they call 911. Thank you.
Thank you. Art Lancaster.
Okay, can you hear me? Urban renewal is a great thing. But at this point in time, we're still trying to get our police department up and running. We're lacking on funds there. And now you're telling me that we want to cut our fire department for urban renewal? Who cares about a skate park? Who cares about pickleball at this time? We need to get the infrastructure settled before we need to add other things that we really don't need at this time. I'm all for urban renewal at the right time, and this is not the right time for urban renewal. We got too many more important items on this agenda that needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Holloman.
Madam Mayor, council members. So I need to disclose, I am on the school board and I'm not representing the school board. And I'm vice president of the fire board and I'm not representing the fire board here. So I'm speaking just as a citizen completely. This just came to me, now about urban renewal. I have a pretty bad taste in my mouth about urban renewal because it destroyed the downtown area of Eugene. It has never recovered from. So what I'd like to know as a citizen and a property owner downtown here, why this? Why now? I'd like to know if any city employees or any elected officials in the city of Cottage Grove have been contacted by any developer or anybody or any entity that stands to gain a financial interest by having urban renewal. That includes consulting companies and those organizations. I'd like to know how this got brought forward. And now, City of Cottage Grove is financially in tough straits. So if it proceeds to go forward with an urban renewal plan, it will have to hire all kinds of entities, consultants, and organizations. And yet we can't fill our potholes, and the citizens are pretty full up on that. So to me, this is entered a state of ridiculousness. Urban renewal benefits newcomers into the town to develop property developers and that sort of thing. It's a giveaway to them. It's a cost to the city and we can't afford it. And I'm really serious. Why now? And who's bringing this forward? And who stands to gain for this? I think the city council deserves to ask that question and to bring that forward. And I mean, any employee in any capacity, any elected official, we need transparency. I think the city citizens are getting blindsided by this. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Councilor Merryday.
I'll give it a shot. Urban renewal is one tool where we can finance public infrastructure and improvements. You mentioned potholes, Mr. Holloman. You served on the ad hoc road committee, and we know we examined every possible solution towards the state of our roads. We presented two modest proposals to the voters, and they rejected it at about a margin of 75% to 25%. So that method failed to improve the roads. That was the recommendation of the committee. So we're looking for other ways to finance improvements that the citizens want, including roads. There's a list of projects in the plan that are stated what the financing will go to pay for. And if you look, let me see, not as quite as familiar with this as I should be, but maybe Director Stewart could emphasize some of the road improvement projects. I'm not putting them directly under my fingers.
Mayor and Council Meredith, I put together a list of a pretty comprehensive list of items that this proposed district could work with. The first item is land acquisition and assembling of properties, potentially for parking garage, hotel, redevelopment. There's a bucket for that. Emergency preparedness would be to do a feasibility study and have grant match money for historic buildings downtowns. They can be fortified in case of an earthquake. Next is unique district identity, which once again is some grant match for historic rehabilitation of buildings and also ADA improvements for historic structures. Park improvements for All-America Park, Bohemian Park, and Pointer Park. And then there's quite a list of transportation, pedestrian, ADA improvements. Essentially are all the recommended improvements that were adopted in the revitalization plan. So we were able to fund about 1/3 of the project with the Main Street grant. This could potentially fund the rest of the redevelopment, construction of roads, sidewalks between the community center and Washington Street. Also includes utilities. There's a desire to underground the power lines in downtown, the alleyways, and the main Washington. This would provide the resources to do that. It would also install water lines and sewer lines in both Washington and Whitaker Street downtown here, so that it would facilitate redevelopment of the half blocks that are facing Main Street, that they could be redeveloped. And then there's some staffing availability for finance and planning. And lastly, a development loan program that could facilitate gap loan funding for developments that can't come up with the resources traditionally that could proceed. So case in point, we've had a redevelopment there at 6th and Main Street, turning into a boutique hotel. It could be an entity that might be able to apply for the resources to complete that project and get it actually operational and beneficial downtown. So there's quite a list of items that were strategically thought about that would foster and encourage development and redevelopment of the downtown core, and also a street improvement at Gateway and Main Street. That intersection down there is very difficult for freight trucks to maneuver. Almost on a monthly basis, I get a telephone call from somebody that a freight truck is at the traffic light pole there at the corner of the northwest corner of that intersection. So trying to redevelop that resources to improve it and include ADA is one of the projects.
Thank you. And also, I heard a reference to the Eugene urban renewal where they used eminent domain in this specific plan, that's any land acquisition would come from willing property owners. There would be no use of eminent domain for this plan. Is that correct?
That's correct. So, in my services, elected official in my county, I'm aware of district that was operational during that period of time. We were considering partnering with Lane County on urban district for the downtown. This county had quite a bit of property there. So to make if folks are familiar with the Fifth Street Public Market and the Gordon and the workforce housing that was created over the last 5 to 8 years, that was they utilized an urban renewal district tool to make that successful.
So in a nutshell, this is a tool for financing projects that we are currently unable to finance through our traditional property tax revenues.
That's correct, in hopes that they're strategic and that they result in fairly immediate, but development would follow, redevelopment and investment in those areas would follow us so that we could adequately support redevelopment.
And that would increase our tax base.
I believe that Ms. Howard showed a chart, but if we continue down the path that we are, if we did nothing, we would see a 3% increase each year, provided we don't have an economic downturn. But if these investments actually do pay off and they're strategic, we could see potentially 3 to 4 times the increase in property tax.
Thank you.
Counselor Urban.
Appreciate the questions, the concerns raised. There are legitimate, I think, responses to what is reality around us. I would like to just start by trying to state the reality that I see and the problems that we're facing and why this is of interest to at least examine. But before that, where did this, I first started hearing, I think, about consciously where through the street improvement process, when we were examining what the avenues and the tools were for being able to address the backlog of maintenance on the streets, ones that need to be totally dug up and an actual base put in to just topping and keeping the infiltration of water from coming in and destroying them further. A real problem, a massive backlog. And that was one of the first times that this mechanism, which effectively, as we went through quite effectively last meeting, is just a way to move more tax resources into specific projects in a specific region to fund those projects with that tax financing. And it does have the effect on the other taxing districts, not so much on the school district because of the way the state funding works, but it does have a real impact on the fire district. So that's something we would absolutely have to work together on. Certainly would not want to be in an adversarial situation in that. That'll be really necessary. But we live in a state that has and one that I actually support as a taxpayer, a cap on the increase in property taxes at that 3%. But when labor and expenses outpace the revenue, this fire district's going to be in the same position. You know, if we do nothing, if we actually don't add new taxable properties that basically reset to assessed value, real market value, then we're going to be stuck in that 3%. We're out. Inflation is outpacing 3%. Like we're outpacing. We're just in a bad situation. We either dramatically cut spending, which open to hear those suggestions on what that means. That's cuts in levels of service and cuts in spending, or you gather the resources from hopefully willing participants in that system. That's the method I want to work towards. and I apologize for this is a huge issue that has so many implications on everything from trust in government to trust in the elected officials to, I think if we all, in a hypothetical scenario where we all saw these are the projects, these are going to be the outcomes, this is how it directly benefits, and it's a sure thing, I think that this would be a no-brainer, that this would pass, that there would be support for it, especially if there are ways to backfill those that were suffering, so that we didn't have a degradation in the services from the fire district. But we're not there. So this one is more difficult. So the best I think we can do is lay out plans, engage in those plans here. Hey, I don't think that's going to ever work, and here's why. Get more eyes on them, but also we kind of have to face the facts that we have to do something. We have to do something. It doesn't have to be just anything. It doesn't have to be harebrained, but we have to do something. Otherwise, it just continues to degrade. Things get worse. So we're literally all in the situation together. We covet your input and the things that people have seen that not all of us have seen, so that be aware of the dangers. But at the end of the day, we're going to need to make a decision. And from where I sit, I don't want to do nothing and just watch it degrade. I want to build on the momentum. I want to look at what Cottage Grove has as its real assets. There's a huge community asset of people that will pull together for common purposes, and they're not afraid to work hard and contribute. We no longer have the industry for federal and state and other reasons of the timber dollars to count on. We don't have a lot of opportunity for living wage jobs, family wage jobs here. We are kind of in this service industry area right now. And some of the concepts, some of the plans in here would be leveraging that asset, would be trying to monopolize, not monopolize, but to feed into it as much as possible, to provide as many opportunities as possible for people that do live here. It's not, to me, it's not enough. That in and itself is somewhat of a stopgap. We need to bring industry back, and that fight may be bigger than this council. And surely it is, but ask yourself, what are we going to do in the meantime? Prices are getting out of control. Like, it's kind of a dire situation. So my ask is that we take the time that we need to come up with a plan that can all be supported. There's going to probably be concessions on multiple sides, but if we can all rally together around it and stress test it, criticize it, see if it withholds the test, then let's do something. The other part to Mr. Holman's question, the next time I heard about it was during the budget process. It got brought up again. We have a consulting individual filling the role of the finance director, and in looking at the budget for those that were part of that process. This was mentioned, was also a very uncomfortable, low budget kind of year. What can we do to get ourselves? What have you seen? What needs to start to get implemented and put into place? And it was like, from the out, a third party kind of outside of it, this is what I've seen it doesn't always work, but it can work if it's done right. And so I was one that said, let's talk about this again. We saw it, we're hearing about it, the plans, a lot of work has been done towards it. Let's bring it back. Let's examine it. So I hope that's answered at least the initial questions, and I'm happy to discuss more this time.
Counselor Lammerman.
Simply, I have not been talked to by any developer or anything. Get that out of the way. So who was it that set these initial boundaries for the urban growth district? The ones that we have on here. This is what everybody's looking at.
Mayor, Councilor Limmerman, that essentially was proposed by our former city planner, Eric Morgan. He worked with Ms. Howard and proposed a couple different scenarios. They worked through the limitations, they got upwards of there's certain limitations on the amount of acreage and the amount of tax revenue. So those were strategically looked at. Also created the boundaries to where he felt and that the investment could be made to deal with the blight that exists in those areas, like down Highway 99 from Woodson Bridge to 4th Street and the downtown core area.
And then it sounds like Chief Woot and the fire department don't necessarily like this boundary map. He had stated that nobody had come and talked to them about any of this initially. Why is that? Especially when we're dealing with multiple different tax districts and overlap.
A little history here. So over the year when Richard Myers was the city manager, we discussed potentially creating a renewal district. They had a very successful one at Brown River Road urban district. Unfortunately, with circumstances with COVID and ice storms and various different things, there was other things that were preoccupying the time of city staff, and they didn't have time to move forward. When Mr. Myers retired and Mr. Klein was the interim city manager, he was city manager for the city of Independence for quite some time. And he really felt that one of the best, his experience was the urban renewal district in Independence basically changed it dramatically for the good. And he wanted to proceed with that. He kicked it off and handed it to Mr. Sauerwein when he took the reins. And we were having conversations with Ms. Howard about bringing it forward. Unfortunately, there was a lot of change on this council, and Mr. Sauerwein elected to put it in pause. All the work that was done those 2 years were put in pause until this could be presented to a new council with the experience to do it again. The reason that Mr. Wooten hasn't been touched, and I plan on driving over to his office tomorrow if this body decides to move forward with the timeline and share with them the plan, what kind of things could be looked at to change the plan. We had lots of conversations when I was a commissioner. I was on the Springfield Economic Development Agency board. We did sit down with the fire districts and various different entities that were going to be impacted and find ways to get to yes. Unfortunately, I have nothing to present to him at the present time. If this body does move forward and improve the timeline, then it's a 45-day conversation. So we can try to work with the plan and bring something formal to the council. And
if we do decide to move forward, what kind of leniency at that point is there to change boundary designations or any of that?
I did get a chance to ask Ms. Howard before this meeting if that was possible. She will probably be able to tell you how much we could, but she said that we could change the boundary and do some work. But I'm gonna let her explain maybe what that limitation might be.
Mr. Sauerwein.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. Just to follow up on something Faye was saying, Mindy and I have already prepared basically packets of information for all other taxing districts. They're sitting on our computer hard drive. We're ready to give them to the other taxing districts as early as tomorrow. But again, if the council chooses to move forward, we're prepared to meet with and talk with all the other taxing districts.
Counselor Sotomayor.
Something about different hats was explained to me at the last meeting. And I am now not a city council person. I'm somebody who is a member of Cottage Grove, and I'm a urban renewal agent. Correct? Okay.
Almost.
And the idea of what this do we see some merit to ask the council to act after we become a council in a little bit, to move forward and see, will this fly? And what is it that we're going to try and find out, to put out, to be real transparent and to be interactive with everybody, has to have some kind of plan A. And plan A is just a draft plan that we go and say, hey, will this work? And if we go and say, this looks like it has some meat that people can tug on and discuss, then we, using this hat, will say, let's fly this by the city council and see if they want to have the staff work on talking with all the other entities and see what would have to change, what can we keep, can this work? So I got scared at the beginning part of this meeting. The words transparency and timeline really bother me. There's so much that can get jammed down people's throats because this is the timeline we need. But 45 days to talk about it, and at the end of those 45 days is when the council will sit down and say, yes, we want to move forward, or no, whatever, there'll be a different decision, or this is how we would like to change based on this feedback. Am I close? So, thank you for comments. And if we cannot meet that transparency level in 45 days and get to feeling collaborative with the community and with our partners, I'll feel like there's a lot of red flags in 45 days to throw up, but I have confidence that there's at least some real positive outcomes that could happen if we can figure out a way.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, listening to all the comments, again, nobody's approached me that has any financial interest. Again, to make that clear. But what Mr. Holloman was referring to as far as Eugene, that was the downtown portion of Eugene, and where they destroyed the downtown Eugene, a much earlier timeline than what you're thinking, Mr. Stewart. The Fifth Street projects, yes, those were fairly successful up in Eugene, but a major portion of downtown suffered greatly through an urban renewal plan. So there are positives, there are negatives. I definitely do not want to see our fire services that are struggling already to survive be cut in any way, shape, or form. So this is a draft. This is not a done deal by any way, shape, or form. This is just a part, this is step A of an A to Z process. And if we do start here and get together with the rest of the districts that would be impacted or potentially impacted, and work with them to modify and be a partner and be transparent, and a solution can be brought forth that makes sense, then I would be more inclined to support doing that. At this point A, or the draft at this point
not that attractive to me. But although I can see that there are benefits there. So that's my take on it at this point. I would like, definitely, we need to be able to present something to the other districts so that they have something to talk about and be able to comment on and say, hey, I want to modify this and this doesn't work for me. This is not something that'll work. What can you do to fix it? That's where we're at this point. So just moving forward at this point is probably the best step, understanding that it can come to a screeching halt at any time and may have to.
Right. I actually had one more person that signed up online that I bypassed. I apologize for that. Peggy Good.
Hello, my name is Peggy Good. I do not live within the city limits, but I have lived in Cottage Grove area all my life and have been an active player in the pickleball community for 4+ years. I'm speaking to an action item on the agenda tonight, 10C, business from the city manager, continued discussion of skate park and pickleball courts. I'm here along with Ken Rowe in support of our pickleball community regarding potential new permanent courts. We are very excited to learn that discussion is continuing with the expansion of new courts. At the August 11th council meeting, Mike Sauerwein suggested a new location for 2 additional pickleball courts, expanding from the east end of the park towards South 15th Street. We measured off the area today, and there is ample room to move the fence, add 2 new courts, and maintain a grassy area for the picnic tables and socialization. Not knowing what the setback requirements are from the street, we are confident that there is plenty of room to accommodate those requirements without removing the trees. An additional benefit with the new courts in that proposed location is that it will not interfere or compete with park space for Bohemia Mining Days. Bumping out to the east would give the park 6 permanent pickleball courts, keeping the 2 temporary courts and the existing tennis courts. We also mentioned on August 11th about forming a nonprofit to help offset costs of court expansion. Recently, it has been brought to our attention that since we are members of the nonprofit Emerald Pickleball Club in Eugene, we can apply for funding for the Coiner Park Pickleball Project. We are still advocating for addressing the park's public restrooms, whether updating the existing restrooms or building new ones. I'd like to thank Mike Sauerwein and the City Council for continuing this discussion on expanding our park's pickleball courts and growing Coiner Park into a family-friendly destination. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item 2, resolution of the Cottage Grove Urban Renewal Agency approving and adopting agency bylaws. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So Chapter 457 of Oregon Revised Statutes grants powers and duties to urban renewal agencies. City of Cottage Grove has an urban renewal agency that was established on September 22nd, 1986, or I should say it was passed from the Housing and Community Services Authority on that date, and it was accepted through resolution number 990. Attached for the agency's consideration is a resolution adopting bylaws for the agency. Ms. Howard, the city's urban renewal consultant, recommends the proposed bylaws. The city's legal counsel, Ms. Conley, has reviewed and and tightened up the proposed bylaws. So the recommendation of staff is for the Cottage Grove Urban Renewal Agency directors to approve the resolution adopting the agency bylaws for the Cottage Grove Urban.
You have a resolution number?
Mayor, I assigned a unique resolution number so that this stands alone for the Urban Renewal Agency. So it's resolution URA 25-01.
Thank you, Mindy. I'll entertain a motion. Counselor Urban.
Just want to make sure I understand this before I make any motion. The motion I'd be making, does that involve the nomination as well, or would that be a separate motion? Nomination chair, vice chair?
Separate. That would be a separate motion. Yeah. Thank you, Counselor. The next item.
That being the same.
Those would actually not necessarily be a resolution. Those will just be motions. Mhm.
Grove Urban Agency adopt resolution URA 25-01, approving the agency bylaws, Article 3 of the bylaw, approving the agency bylaws.
You have a motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Counselor Urban.
So to clarify, this is the bylaws, it's not necessarily the time. So
Any other discussion? Will the recorder please call? Oh, Counselor Wilson.
Just clarifying that this is just so that what Mr. Sauerwein has on the computer and then Mindy put together, that can be then forwarded to.
Go ahead, Fed.
Mayor, Councilor Wilson. So this is.
All this is. Right.
Closed.
Right.
Urban district.
Mhm.
So we're trying to resurrect that agency. And one of the recommendations from our consultant to adopt bylaws that reflect the current statute that governs agencies. And that's what you're being asked to consider now, is to adopt essentially your governing body of this organization.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Counselor Merriday,
Aye.
Counselor Settlemyre,
Aye.
Counselor Urban, Counselor Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. All right. 3, appointing officers for the Cottage Grove Urban Renewal. Mr. Stewart.
Agency just adopted their bylaws, and part of the responsibilities under Article 3 of the bylaws is to appoint or nominate or the right word, essentially voting your chair and vice chair / secretary. Those are the two agency seats, similar to the mayor and council president. And then also appoint a urban renewal agency executive director.
Will entertain nominations. Councilor Merida.
I would nominate Councillor Urban as chair of the Urban Renewal Agency.
I second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Now we need a vice chair. I would nominate Counselor Wilson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Counselor.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Now I have to announce that I do have a potential conflict of interest. I own 3 commercial buildings in the proposed urban renewal district. And while there is no guarantee that that will up the value, there is potential because one of the proposed plans is to fix blighted properties, which could raise everyone's property values. I did reach out to Oregon Ethics and they advised me that I am fine to continue in discussion and vote. My second potential conflict of interest is that my husband is employed by one of the taxing entities, which is South Lane Fire. And I also consulted with Oregon Ethics on this, and they informed me that because South Lane Fire is not actually a business, they're a public company, that I am still okay to vote and be part of the discussion as well. And the city attorney's here, so I'm happy to see you here tonight. And Carrie, would you have anything that you would like to add that I might be missing on that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Simply that as your husband's employer is a business that takes it out of the ethics consideration. However, he's an employee whose income may or may not be impacted. We don't know how the various taxing entities are going to absorb the reduction over time of their tax revenues. And that because we don't know how they will absorb it. We don't know whether that will impact his income, which then translates to a potential conflict for you. And so I just want to make sure that the city recorder has all of that taken down so that we have your 2 potential conflicts of interest recorded, and you now may proceed to participate and vote.
All right. Item 4, approval of the Cottage Grove Urban Renewal Timeline. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So this evening we have with us Ms. Howard. She's our consultant. It's been guiding the city staff through this process. I'd like to go ahead and invite her out. She has a presentation this evening. As was stated earlier this evening, there's a timeline that she will share with you of things that need to take place to be able to bring this to the city council for public hearings and potential adoption through the month of November. So with that, I'd just like to turn it over to Ms. Howard.
And I think your city recorder wanted to say something before I started.
Ms. Roberts.
You gathered that from my hand motion?
Yeah.
So at this point, it's not important to me necessarily that you change positions, but just to recognize that Councilor Irvin is now the agency chair.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Elaine Howard, the consultant who has been working with you on this since 2024. So what I will go through tonight is the proposed urban renewal area. I'll do a very short urban renewal 101 since just at our last meeting, we did an elongated urban renewal 101. The reason I go over it again is if there's anybody in the audience who doesn't understand how it works, so we can at least cover the basics of it and what the potential next steps would be, and then for you to ask any questions and have discussion. This is the draft boundary. As was discussed earlier, we originally started in a feasibility study. We looked at 2 areas trying to decide what would be most beneficial for the city. And at that time, the city staff recommended that we just put those 2 areas together and have one urban renewal potential boundary. It fit both the acreage limitations and the assessed value limitations, and allowed you to not have to administer 2 separate urban renewal areas, but to have one urban renewal area that basically concentrated on the commercial areas within your city. So that is what the draft boundary is. We had talked a little bit, and with the input, this information is all draft. The draft plan and draft report are stamped with draft. They remain draft until they go to the city council, and we'll go through the timeline in a few minutes. So changes can be made to the boundary, to the projects, to the financing during this time frame. The reason that it happens during this time frame is until you vote tonight, we don't know for sure that you all want to proceed at all. So we've been working on this. It's been a technical study. At this point, you as the agency will make the decision whether to go out for the public review process. It's really not appropriate to have a lot of input before then because we don't know for sure you're moving forward. So that input typically does happen after the agency says, yes, let's go out and review our draft documents. Next slide. Every urban renewal plan has a proposed maximum indebtedness. If you adopt the plan, it becomes the maximum indebtedness. The maximum indebtedness under this plan would be $65,400,000. The capacity in today's dollars, that means if we looked at all those projects that Mr. Stewart identified, we identify those in what we know they'll cost or think they'll cost in today's dollars. And so that maximum indebtedness is over a 30-year time frame. So we bring the cost of that or the value of that back to today's dollars. And the projects add up to a capacity of about $37,300,000. The capacity in years or over time is slower at the beginning of an urban renewal area because we're just relying on that 3% annual increase in growth. But it builds over time as you're able to gain enough money to do a loan or a bond sale, or some private development happens and you're able to gain the increased tax revenue off of that new development. Next slide. The project list that Mr. Stewart went through has been condensed for this purpose. We do have the full list that's available to anyone, but it's condensed within specific categories. So economic development and land acquisition, that is the category that will actually increase your assessed values within the city for taxing districts to enjoy. So it's important to be able to facilitate new development within your community, to be able to increase your tax base for the future for both you and all the taxing districts. That is at 23% of the total projected funding. Emergency preparedness is at 3%, unique district identity 1%, parks 1%, transportation, pedestrian, and ADA at 31%. So and you're not council as chair urban, talked about earlier when you were talking about what things needed to be done, transportation is one of your huge issues for your city where you don't have funding. So I wanted to clear up one thing. Urban renewal can't do potholes, but urban renewal, because that's just maintenance, and urban renewal has to be used for more capital improvement projects. So it can be used for similar to what is happening out front, where you take the street down to nothing and rebuild a street. So it's more of the rebuilding. And with that, Mr. Stewart also said you'll be redoing some of those utilities. So you go into the basics and build your new street over the top of that. The pedestrian ADA are requirements, and none of your side streets, not none of them, most of the sidewalks on the side streets don't have those ADA requirements. So it's something that will benefit your entire community. The utilities, water, sewer, storm, and power is, 14%. The development loan program is 17%. That also is incentives to both improve existing properties within your area and to build on potentially vacant properties where someone might come to you and say, we would love to build X, but our costs are short, our costs exceed our financing. And urban renewal is often used for what's called the gap financing. So to make a project that is presently not feasible, a feasible project, so that you can get that new asset to your community. The staffing and financing over the 30-year program is estimated at $4 million or 11%. When we write a plan and a report on the plan, we have to say that it's financially feasible at the time that the city council, if they do, decides to adopt it. All of those numbers can be changed. So if you decide to allocate more money to emergency preparedness, you can do that through the work of the agency board. If you add new projects which aren't on that specific list, those can be added through a minor amendment to the plan, which is also done by the agency board. So the actual administration of the urban renewal area, if adopted, is done by this board. However, the adopting of the plan is done by the city council. So what this board's action, and it's proposed for tonight, your schedule can change if you decide, right? It's just proposed for tonight, would be to send the plan and report out for public review, which includes sending it to all the taxing districts. And as your city manager stated, all of those letters are prepared to go out tomorrow. So these numbers are what are in the plan and report. They are changeable both through this process, because everything's draft at this point. They are changeable in the future as long as they're for a project that's in the plan, and then you can add a new project if you need to. Next slide. There are statutory limitations on how much urban renewal any city may have. For cities that are under population of 50,000, you may have up to 25% of your acreage and your assessed value within an urban renewal area. Your acreage here is 10.1% and the assessed value is 7%. So well below those statutory restrictions. Next slide. You all received all of this information at our last meeting. I'm just going to go through, I think, 4 or 5 slides fairly quickly, but tax increment is not, / urban renewal is not a new tax. It is a division of taxes that are already paid. So the burden of urban renewal or tax increment financing is not on property tax payers. It is on the other taxing districts, like the city itself, the fire district, the county. So A lot of times people worry that their tax bill is going to go up because of urban renewal. Urban renewal does not directly cause any tax bill to go up. Next slide. When we pay our property taxes in November, that property tax revenue goes to the assessor's office, to the treasurer's office, out to all the regular taxing jurisdictions. It's distributed. Property taxes in Oregon increase for two reasons. That 3% that's allowed to be increased on our assessed value every year, our real market value can increase more than that. So if somebody owns property in the urban renewal area, your assessed value will not go up by more than 3%, which it probably would anyway. Your real market value might go up. So you might be able to sell your property for more if the entire area is improved, but your assessed value, unless you do improvements, so that's the second reason property taxes go up in Oregon, is if you do substantial improvements or if you do new construction on your property. At that point, the assessor's office is allowed to revalue your property and establish a new real market value and a new assessed value. When an urban renewal area is formed within a city, the property values within that specific area, so not the city as a whole, but just within that urban renewal area, change a little bit in how the assessor deals with the distribution of the increases of taxes within that area. So again, this is just that 3% or increased value on new construction or substantial improvements. Next slide. So any increased value after an urban renewal area is formed, and the taxes off of that go to the urban renewal agency. So instead of going to the regular taxing districts, they still get the value off of the taxes at the time the area was established, but any increases in that will now go, if adopted, to the urban renewal agency. This slide does a really good job of showing why urban renewal is effective. Tiberius Solutions, who does all of our financial forecasting, prepared this slide. You can see in the orange hash mark, that is a 3% growth on value. So that line just keeps going up 3%. That is what you get in your taxes for operating your city or your county or your fire district if you don't improve your tax base in some way. If you have urban renewal that allows you to invest in infrastructure and streets and allows you to work with developers to improve properties or build new properties, you're able to increase that assessed value and increase the amount of taxes that come in, and do that over the time frame of the urban renewal area. When the urban renewal area terminates, all of that increased assessed value goes back on the property tax rolls for all of the different taxing districts to participate in receiving that increase. So you can see that that increase is much higher than the 3% line, and it continues to grow because it's growing off of not only the increase in assessed value, but then you get to add the 3% onto that also as it keeps going year after year. So that is what makes urban renewal powerful. Yes, it has an impact on all taxing districts. And I think all taxing districts are trying to figure out how to increase their revenues. This is a way, it is long-term, but it is a way to increase your revenues. Chair?
Thank you. Can you speak to the shape of the curve after the termination of the urban renewal area? It still looks like an exponential function rather than
and this is an example. It is not using your specific, this is an example that goes with an urban renewal 101 presentation. I can get Tiberius to develop this specifically for your projections so that we can look at that. We don't usually prepare that, but we can do that if that is helpful.
Well, if I'm interpreting it correctly, you could have you could have 3 scenarios. You could have, new development, it could be built, assuming it gets built, new tax roll, development. And then after the district is closed, all the money has been paid off. That could potentially spur the overall economic environment, attract new business, be an environment that people want to put a business here, and then you might see an exponential or something beyond the 3%. If the district closed, projects were done, and then nothing else happened, then it would be back to the flat 3%.
Right.
Fair.
Right. I first came to Cottage Grove when Mr. Meyer was the city manager a number of years ago. And I don't know if any of you were on city council at that time. And we talked about urban renewal. And they decided not to proceed. When I came back for the feasibility study and I walked through the downtown, there was not one building that had been improved. There was no new construction. There was no improvements to the streets or the sidewalks. So you had kept at that 3% maybe, but barely, I would suspect. And I thought to myself, if nothing gets done here, you're just going to stay at that 3% forever. Now, when I came last month and saw your street project out here, I was thrilled because that project, a lot of times you need something to bump start urban renewal to get it going, something that really improves the area. So investment starts coming and then your money comes faster because you get increased taxes. And it's my belief that that project will jumpstart your area. It will make it more feasible. I think developers will look at it differently. Building owners will look at it differently because it will be a huge impact when done. Will it do everything by itself? So you don't need urban renewal anymore? No, I don't think it will. I could be wrong. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm pretty good at, I love the little cities in Oregon. I'm pretty good at knowing what happens and what doesn't and who's doing it well and who isn't. You have a huge opportunity and you have a huge momentum builder out there. I am really sorry that urban renewal funding is the way it is, that it impacts other taxing districts. That's just what it is. And so I can prepare plans and reports, and we have to work with the statute that is and decide whether that works for your community or not. I think, yeah, it goes through.
So again, at the termination of the urban renewal agency, that increment tax that has been subtracted will be added back in. So that was also a reason for that exponential curve, I believe, in the model.
I was speaking to after.
Right. It just, yeah. Yeah, and that 3% is higher, that curve is higher than the 3%. And so you're right, that anticipates your area keeps growing and keeps getting investment.
But is it also not true that once the urban renewal agency dissolves, then what you had been diverting into it is now added back? So
that's correct.
And that could also show the exponential rise. You're increasing the amount of usable tax.
Challenging the instructor, but wouldn't that be vertical axis, the amount above the old line, that's that added back revenue. But the slope of the curve indicates the future is the rate at which revenue is being added, taxing revenue.
So my bet is that curve is at about 6%, 5.5 to 6%. And it continues going up, anticipating it will continue going up at a good investment rate. And there are, little towns, Wilsonville's one of them. Bend is not a little town anymore, but was, where their growth, where they've had urban renewal and invested, does grow at 5 and 6 to Tualatin, 5 and 6% as it moves up. Sisters, yeah.
Questions in your analysis, and maybe through the budget process, what has been the natural growth of our city's operating expenses?
I don't do that analysis of what your operating expenses are.
Like what would be our target? What do we need to target to basically break even with the delivery of services if all else doesn't change?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but that's certainly something that we could provide.
And then the other question was, speaking to the unfortunate nature of the taxing districts, is it allowable by statute to adjust how much, or is it legal to as just a potential situation where you're backfilling maybe as emergency services project or something, to where you can find a workable solution? I'm sure
You cannot exempt any taxing district. You cannot, by statute, backfill a taxing district. What you can do, and what I've done on many plans, is include like a fire district within your boundary, and then pledge a specific amount of money if they need to do a fire station upgrade in the future, or a parking lot upgrade or surfacing in the future. I have had some districts buy equipment. That is something that I make their city attorney say that it's okay. They've done that on the premise that it is a capital expenditure. And I've had legal opinions that have allowed that to happen. I'm not an attorney. I can't give you that legal opinion, but I know that there are districts, urban renewal areas, just agencies that have done that kind of project.
Thank you.
Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Is 30 years the standard time?
It is. What happens you can see here over time. In the beginning, it's really slow. So the initial 5 years is just waiting around really for some money to start coming in so that you can either place a bond or get a loan. Then money starts coming in. I have done districts that are 25 years. Your last 5 years are your most productive, obviously. So if you cut off the last, you can do that. You can say, okay, we're going to do this based on a premise of a 25-year plan, not a 30-year plan. Duration is not set in an urban renewal plan, just the maximum indebtedness. That would reduce your maximum indebtedness. And you could decide that that was more palatable and something that you wanted to do. We can do that, which then also means reducing the project list and deciding which projects you don't want to fund. And you can certainly do that also. So between 25 and 30 years, I really counsel my clients never to go over 30 years because it just seems like too long. I think the next slide says what the next steps are. So if you authorize it tonight through a motion, the next step would be to send a copy of the plan and the report to all the taxing districts. We have a potential meeting set with the Lane County Commissioners, and the dates on the next slide. We have a potential meeting with Cottage Grove. There we go. So Planning Commission, Cottage Grove, October 15th. Potential City Council hearing on November 10th. And then it's a non-emergency ordinance. So the second reading would be on November 24th. The ordinance doesn't go into effect for 30 days, so it would not be effective until December 24th. That timeline is not absolute. It can be changed. If it goes beyond these dates into next year, your first year of tax increment revenues will get put out an entire year. So that is just, weighing the pros and cons of whether you want to elongate the process now or not. My suggestion to you is to go ahead and send out your consultant for letters, get input, work with the taxing districts, take it to the planning commission, and then at the city council meeting, you'll have input from the taxing districts. You'll be able to see whether you've been able to come to an agreement with the fire district on any potential changes that might make them decide to support the plan. And at that point, you could decide to move it forward in date, so into 2026, or you could decide to adopt it, or you could decide to table it.
What happens if taxing districts, say 50%, don't agree?
The city council, so not the agency, but the city council has the ability to adopt a plan on their own. So if they don't agree, within the letter that gets transmitted to them, they are told that this 45-day time frame allows them to provide any written correspondence to the city council. If you get written correspondence that asks you to do something to make it be change the boundary or include other projects or to table it or whatever, you are required by statute to either accept, reject, or modify that input from the taxing district. That has to be included within your ordinance. So if you get that written recommendation from any taxing district, then you will look at the ordinance and I'll work with you and your attorney to modify it to either accept, reject, or modify any taxing district recommendation. But they don't get a vote on urban renewal. The city council gets the only vote.
Does that change if there are any public buildings?
It does, but we don't have any public buildings in this plan.
Unless an affected taxing district requests one and it gets added? Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
If a taxing district requests assistance for a public building, you have to get 3 of the top 4 taxing districts to agree with that. So your top 4 taxing districts who are most impacted is the school district, the county, the city, and I will tell you in just a minute what the 4th is. And I wanted to make sure it wasn't the ESD and the fire district. So that's typically what it is. So 3 of the 4 of those would have to, by resolution of their board, accept that there is a public building that could be funded within your plan. And they do that, again, by resolution of their board. And I've done that many times, sometimes easier than not.
Ms. Howard, could that process the amendment plan 3 years down the road? You could go through that.
You can go through that process anytime you would add a public building to the plan. You have to go through just that process of the concurrence of the public building. So you wouldn't have to do a whole new report. Unless it added acreage over 1% of the acreage of your plan. So you would want to make sure if you're thinking about doing that, that whatever property is does not add over 1%, because if you do that, it becomes a substantial amendment that has to go through this whole process again. I think your staff, we can go to questions, but I think your staff report contains a potential motion. And it does identify the specific process of what you would go through if you decide to move it forward. Any other questions for me?
Questions? Ms. Howard?
I have a potential change to the suggested motion because it will not only go to the general government taxing districts, but it will get sent to the school district, the ESD, and the Lane Community College. Even though their funding is substantially backfilled, they still are required to receive this letter. So I would just change the suggested motion to all overlapping taxing districts.
Motion. Discussion. Thoughts we can now. So if we adopt this timeline, say, let's float this plan, let's get it out there. We receive feedback. It represents a substantial change to the draft. Do we then take it at that point and say, do we have enough time to amend, to actually go through this process? At what point, is the point of no return essentially? Or where we just say, hey, we need to table this. If we've already approved this timeline, do we table it any time? Or we just go through the regular timeline?
The timeline can be changed at any point. You don't have to adopt a timeline. By putting the timeline in, it lets you know what we've tentatively scheduled to get this adopted, to get you tax increment revenues at the earliest date. But that timeline can change at any point. The point of no return on any changes to the plan is when you have the hearing. You can have the hearing. So that's the first city council meeting on November 10th. You can have the hearing, still a draft plan. You're addressing the taxing districts, consult and confer. You've sent notice out to all of your either residents or voters or utility customers. You'll get input there, so you can consider that input. And you can say, we're tabling this for X amount of time to consider all the input. We're adopting the plan based on these changes, and you specify changes. We're adopting this plan as is. So you have flexibility up to that November 10th. On November 24th, that public hearing is closed. You don't take new testimony on that item. It's just a second reading of the item, and you either adopt it or you don't. So the November 10th is really your date where in between that time, you know, if you're negotiating with a taxing district or staff comes up with something or agency members do, we can make changes to the plan. And when it comes in front of either planning commission or city council, we can say from the draft that was put forward by the agency, we've made these changes. So it could be a change in time frame or a change in boundary or a change in projects or whatever. That's why it's still draft. That's that. Otherwise, talking to the taxing districts isn't worth anything if we aren't going to change anything if they have comment, right? So.
I approve the Cottage Grove Urban Renewal Plan timeline and direct staff to forward the plan to all overlapping taxing districts as listed. The Cottage Grove Planning Commission for the review of the plans, conformance to the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan, the Lane County Commission for briefing, the Cottage Grove City Council for their review and vote on adoption.
Second that motion. Discussion.
I just want to say I understand why we'd want to be doing this. Absolutely. But I do have strong reservations about anything coming out of our essential services. And so that would have to be something that we would have to rectify in order for me to support this. But I'm definitely willing to look at it and see what our options are.
As I stated previously, this is step A of the A to Z. And in order to get input and attempt to make it a workable plan, it has to be out in front of everybody. And until we do this process, it's not out in front of anybody. We don't have any transparency at all, or any input, you know, from the other districts or citizenry to potentially modify it and change it and make it work. And if it can't be modified, changed, and made work, then it can't, and we'll go forward from there.
There was just a few things going through the plan that were going to adopt the timeline, just maybe Scribner kind of error things. So on the back of the first page, summary timeline, there's a date of June 21st, 2022. I'm guessing that date isn't correct.
Is that in the staff report?
Under the summary timeline.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it really matters or not, but I think it's on Cottage Grove Urban Renewal Plan 3, page 3. The second to last paragraph, the plan will be administered by the Cottage Grove Urban Renewal Agency. Changes to the plan must be approved by the agency or city council. It seems we are the same, so I recommend striking or the council, or should it just be the council?
I will, what, is it under background?
Yes, under background.
What paragraph?
2 paragraphs up from the bullet points. Agency or city council.
Oh, the reason it says or city council is because some amendments, the substantial amendments, can only be approved by city council. Minor amendments by the agency. I'd be happy to specify that there because if it wasn't clear to you, so I'll make that more specific.
since gone for a little while. So I think on page 12, future amendments to plan. The plan may be amended as described in the section. The references to Oregon revised statutes reflect those statutes in 2024. I'm guessing that should be 2025.
It should. Thank you.
After this, if you can touch on, this says this plan isn't going to involve any relocation services, but the plan could change depending on how it could change. I'd like to know more about what that state requirement is for potentially relocation services.
And I don't ever deal with that because when we write a plan, typically we aren't talking about relocating anybody. So either your city manager or your city attorney would be better versed in dealing with that.
So it said commercial, residential, so.
Yeah, I mean, that just happens. Let's say it's a residential building and you decide you would like to buy that. Willing seller sells it to you, but they're occupying it. You're required to give them relocation as part of them moving. What that specific standard of relocation is, I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can get back to you on.
I think the table on page 12 of the report accompanying Cottage Grove Urban Head Plan 12. There's a line on the last line is staffing, finance, and planning. I think there's supposed to be another line under there.
Yes.
Total, and I assume that that's one in the set that the administration cost is fully encompassed by that other line.
Yes, it is. Thank you for being so thorough reading this. I don't usually get people who are really thorough, so it's really helpful. I appreciate it.
Page 15. That one, the capacity numbers also say 2014. That I'm not sure that might actually be right, or is that supposed to be capacity numbers at the time of adoption? So I assume all these numbers were put together in 2014. And oh, sorry, in the chart, table 4, third line down, first column.
Yep, should be 2025. And you're right, I had been working on this and things got, so I didn't get that changed. Thank you.
So it is also my understanding that in this plan, there would be the plan itself would have a budget of leading up toward within the ordinance, or would it come after?
No, you'll do that in your annual budgeting for next year. At the same time you do the city council budget, you'll also have to have a process for the agency budget.
Anticipated completion date for each project. There's the line at the end of the first paragraph. The agency will make specific allocations to project categories in their annual budgeting process. At this time, all project allocations are in the other projects line item. So does that assume that there is a budget that exists right now? Prior to the first budget, it's all in other items, or
right now it's in other projects. I've been working with Mr. Stewart on trying to allocate those. We haven't gotten that complete yet. You don't. We should have that complete before it comes back to city council. You could adopt it like this, but I don't recommend that. We need to divide it out and look at it in at least the first 5 years, need to show the anticipated, even though we know it can change, we need to at least have the first 5 years allocated. When I put that together for this because we don't have it, at the point that we actually change it, we'll change the language and change the table.
to sharing provisions that, if I'm understanding it correct, by statute, if you reach the level of development would be amazing, such that you exceed what 10% of the maximum indebtedness, then it automatically kicks back to the taxing districts.
Some portion does, yes.
Some portion does. And then another threshold of 25%. What do you mean by
The second threshold is at 12.5%. So at, if you reach 10%, which is 6,540,000, the agency receives the full 10%, so that 6,540, and plus 25% of anything above that. 75% of anything above that gets redistributed back to the taxing districts. At 12.5%, which is a little over 8 million, you're capped at that amount, and all of it goes back to the taxing districts, anything above that. I've had that happen in urban renewal areas where things have happened much more quickly than they thought they would happen, and that revenue sharing is ongoing. So it can happen. We don't project it well in this, given the amount of development that we projected. I anticipate you're going to do better than our projections simply because of your tremendous project out here. So could be faster.
As far as the other taxing districts, so Southland School District, they have, as you explained, the backstop of the state funding. Does that also affect Lane ESD, or are they outside of?
The Education Service District is treated the same as the school district in the school funding, state school fund. The community college is also funded on a statewide fund, but it's a separate fund and set up a little differently. And as long as we're talking about taxing districts, I wanted to clarify something too. So on the information on taxing districts, as Chief Wooten said, it shows a projected $5 million that would be reaching the full maximum indebtedness over that amount of time. If the area closed before you reach the full maximum indebtedness, that number obviously goes down. In terms of them thinking about that as an impact on their budget, these figures are based on growth above the 3%. So when they're doing their budget, I'm assuming that their budget is based on a 3% growth. These are based on you growing faster than that, incrementally over the years. So the amount truly foregone to them is that 3%. That's what they would get without an urban renewal area. This growth that we're projecting is predicated on new development coming. It may come without urban renewal, but it hasn't. So yeah, you know, we can make assumptions there, but I just want to make sure that the chief understands, and we can share with him the exact percentage growth rates that we use for each year, because we started more slowly and then increased the percentage growth. But these are higher than 3%. So it's actually higher than if you don't do any urban renewal, they're not going to get this amount of growth within their budgets.
Is that a chart that you produce that to demonstrate that? That would be helpful.
It is. It won't be ready to go out tomorrow. And I know Tiberius has, for me, other work that's due, you know, in the next week. So it's something that we can produce within a week or two. But if we want these to go out tomorrow, I don't have that information for tomorrow.
Thank you. introduce a friendly amendment? I introduce a friendly amendment if I wasn't. To talk the changes it's discussed as far as the scribblers things.
Okay, I suppose you can. Yes, you can ask the individual who made the motion if they would be willing to accept a friendly amendment, and then I'm not a super stickler for protocol, so if they're willing to accept that, I think that we could consider it and the city recorder could reflect that in the minutes and then you can vote.
You can say it.
Please, yeah.
Agent Wilson, will you please accept the date changes? Came up in discussion to the plan.
Absolutely. Those are.
I'm sorry, so what you're really saying is what you would be forwarding is the plan reflecting the amendments discussed and considered with the consultant. So instead of the plan is presented, it's the plan is modified for the discussion.
Should be forward. So yes. Perfectly happy with adjustments as per the discussion.
Discussion. Let's say motion in a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's have it.
And I can make those changes tomorrow morning so that the packet that you send out will be correct. So I'll be sending you new packet tomorrow.
Thank you. Now close the Cottage Grove Urban Renewal meeting, agency meeting.
I'll now reconvene our regular city council meeting. Special presentations, there are none. This is the time for citizen comment. The council will first take comments addressing items not listed on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. The council will then take comments addressing action items on the agenda for a maximum of 30 minutes. Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name, identify whether they are a city resident, and if so, their ward. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for a public hearing may be provided only during that hearing. The council will not make any decisions based on public comment. However, staff and council may choose to ask questions or comment following the conclusion of citizen comments. Kyle Rudman.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. It's a pleasure to be back in front of you tonight. Following our last discussion with the council, we have been having robust conversations both internally and with external parties, including Pacific Power. Through these conversations, which I will say have been very cordial, it has become clear that this effort we've discussed to bring EPUD to the city would very likely result in a prolonged legal battle that will not be in the best interest of EPUD, the city, or this community. And so as a result, earlier today, our board met and asked me to communicate that we are no longer interested in pursuing this effort. And we recommend the city not send a letter that appears on tonight's agenda. I can understand this may seem like a sudden change. And that's why I'm here to try to be as transparent as we can about our thinking. We can see after taking more time to talk about this, and I can imagine all of you can see after the last meeting where we had strong feelings being exchanged on all sides, that any takeover move would be extremely divisive, expensive, and long. And these impacts, quite frankly, are very likely to outweigh any of the benefits that might result. Truly, the only winners in this scenario are going to be the attorneys. We also do have common interests with the investor-owned utilities, including Pacific Power. And this effort would put at risk some of the important work that we are doing with them. I can point to issues such as wildfire prevention, reliability improvements, affordability, and trying to ensure that utilities in this state can remain financially viable. The ability for us to speak with one voice as utilities on each of these issues is extremely important, especially up in Salem, and we don't want to jeopardize this. So we're happy to discuss opportunities for joint projects and collaboration that would benefit the city of Cottage Grove. And I think there's actually plenty to talk about on that front, including things that we could potentially do with Pacific Power to enhance service to everybody here in this area. But we do firmly believe that all parties are going to be best served by working together rather than in opposition. We appreciate the dialogue we've had with the city, and we want to continue to be good partners down here. We just want to be smart about this. And there's no sense starting up a knockdown, drag out fight when it would clearly have a negative impact on EPUD, on the city, and on the citizens. I hope that provides some insight into our thinking, and that you can see we really want to do what's best for this community, even if that means having a lesser role for EPUD. We're not above shifting course when it becomes apparent that costs are starting to outweigh benefits, and upon reflection, that really is what we see happening here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I inadvertently switched the order on the agenda. So now we are going to go to items not on the agenda for comment. Ricky Crawford.
Hello, Ricky Crawford. I live at 106 North 16th Street, and I'm here to revisit something that was a hot topic a while back, and that is the homeless parking on the street across from my house. It's become a big problem now for me and my neighbor. We're kind of to the point of being up here with it. I've been there for 2 years in my parents' house, and continues to get worse, and we just would like to do something different. I've worked with these folks. Myself, I've lived in a travel trailer for 8 years before moving in my house, my parents' house 2 years ago, so I fully understand where they're at. I understand that there's a lot of people out there that destroy things, and there's people that respect and take care of things. And we got people across the street over there that continuously do not respect the trash on the streets, human feces, horns all night long, verbal disputes with myself. I wasn't even in the house, just kind of done with all of this over there. And so you all know the problem. I don't need to reiterate all the things. I can tell you stories up the wazoo, but it's not going to help with that. What I would like to do is to propose that the city consider putting parking restrictions across the street over there in the form of permit parking between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. That way people can use the street in the daytime just like normal. I can park my car across the street throughout the night, 24/7, which I need to do because I don't have the parking in front of my house. And that wins for everybody. The reason that this really is coming about is I talked with the folks. They lost their car. Somebody towed their car away, so one of the people lost it. This lady's like 70-some years old. Over 2 years, I've gotten to know them to some degree. And I said, hey, have you checked out services over here? She goes, oh yeah, I know about them. But then nothing's ever followed up on. 2 weeks, 3 weeks after their car was lost, they lived on the street in front of my house for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden they have a new car again. And they're right back to the normal thing. They don't want to better themselves right now. The folks that I have over there, they just are complacent and they just enjoy doing what they do. The gentleman that uses the travel trailer over there, who lives out there, he's out there 3 or 4 days, 5 days a week because they go for 3 days and they leave for a day and they come back for 3 more days. So I get away with them 1 day and they're back for 3. He used to live at the Saginaw St. Vincent de Paul Park for 10 years until St. Vincent de Paul took it over and he didn't like the rules there, so he moved on. And he's moved on to our street. It's not a problem we're all unfamiliar with. And I believe me, like I said, I've been in a travel trailer for 8 years before moving in my parents' house 2 years ago. I understand it out there. There's people that take care of things. There's people that don't. We have people that don't right now. And I really would like to get some support and help. I know we've taken away all their other parking places. Down by the racetrack, there used to be a place where they would park down there. We got boulders in front of that now. So there's one less place for them to park out of the front of the houses. And we got them back in front of my house. So please consider permit parking. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. think it's Secord.
Ward 3, live in Cottage Grove here. Wow. Had a compliment for you, but it's been a hell of a meeting. First off, I'd like to thank the city council for sponsoring the panning out front. I know it was a lot of money, but I think we're going to get mileage out of it. Right after the panning, the museum was slammed. Mine owners are getting applications like crazy. I hope other businesses are doing okay. And I think we need to thank Faye's multi-talented crew for what they built out front. Tell you guys thank you. It worked out real good. Try to keep our history alive.
Ken Rue? Ken? Right. Public hearings, there are none. Consent agenda.
Council approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion with the second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. No resolutions and ordinances. Business from the city council. Item A, transfer of remaining pallet shelters to Lane County. Mr. Sauerwein.
Well, good evening again, Your Honor, and members of the City Council. As you all know, back in April of 2022, Lane County transferred ownership of 30 small and 3 large pallet shelters to the city of Cottage Grove. And back in June, the city transferred ownership of 10 of those small pallet shelters back to Lane County. Lane County is now requesting that the city transfer ownership of the remaining 20 small and 3 large pallet shelters back to Lane County, and they would be utilized by St. Vincent de Paul in Eugene.
Counselor Sotomayor.
Director Stewart, you talked to us about this at one time as far as what does the city now see as use? Should we keep these or, you know, what are some positives and negatives for us to have them as a city as we currently view the pallet shelters?
Mayor, Councilor Sotomayor. Do my best here. So presently, the way the pallet structures are setting, they're down on a piece of property down south of town near R Street. Our staff goes in there on a regular basis to keep the grass mowed and make sure that there's been nobody break into the structures. So we do spend some staff time just maintaining them as the status quo right now. Previously, there was conversations about tearing or dismantling the units and storing them for future use. That poses a couple challenges for the city staff. First of all, where would we store them? We just don't have a space that could store them inside and keep them protected from the weather, which has been a concern right now with UV rays. The second is keeping them for a potential to remobilize them. We could reset them up, but the challenge in making them usable and take advantage of the heaters and various different air conditioners, we would have to provide power to them. And that comes at, and it has come to the city at a substantial cost. That's it. We'll put in wire electrical infrastructure to accommodate them when they were first designed to be at the 12th Street site and now down at the 199th site. It generally takes probably about an hour for 3 to 4 people to set them up. So there's a considerable amount of staff time. If we were to deploy them for an emergency situation, say nice storm, flooding event, or wildfire, it would take some time to get them set up and then figure out how we were going to power them up so that they were usable. So those are challenges. Since the city received those structures, we've made pretty good headway on improving our designated Red Cross shelter, which is the community center. Hopefully by the end of in the next 2 months, we are currently waiting for a trailer to be delivered, and we have purchased a generator that will power the community center. So I'm hoping within the next couple of months, we will have a portable generator to the community center. So we'll have backup power to be able to accommodate events to take the power out and make that site challenging to use without power. Also, the Sheriff's Department, through their search and rescue division, they have acquired tents, warming tents that we can request, and they can come out and set them up in probably a very similar period of time, an hour or so, from the time they arrive. And then they're ready to use. They come with the heating source and everything. So they're self-contained, and so they provide the necessary items to make them usable. So there's some challenges with the current pallet structures if we were going to store them, and then also try to reassemble them and make them usable for various different events.
Counselor Sotomayor.
So from your perspective, would you suggest we hang on to these pallet shelters? Come on. Okay. But the potential is there. It would just be a storage problem and a time issue. And there are other resources that do the same thing that would be more expedient for us to look at in the future. Thanks.
Just to be clear, the pallet shelters are not Legos. You know, you don't take them apart, store them somewhere, pick them up again and put them back together. There's a significant amount of time and effort putting them back together again once they've been taken and stored. And every time you do that, it's a little more difficult than the last time. That makes sense. And I'll also just refer you back to the recent flooding event that we had, and how quickly city staff was able to get the community center up and running with our partners in the fire department, setting up a command center, working with the Red Cross, working with Lane County emergency folks. We were able to set up a shelter that would have served at least 50 people at the community center in a matter of hours. So adding in the fact that we will now have a generator available, we do have other options.
Well, we have a time check. Is everyone okay with continuing for 30 minutes?
So I recall my own words. So this topic came up, which was I did not support them being that we get rid of them if we have emergency accommodation usefulness out of it. One of the items that came out of that discussion that Mr. Stewart brought up that was a factor changer for me was I was remembering that we had power laid down and hookups over behind the Dairy Mart site. I had assumed that that was all still underground and operational, and that it would be something that could really serve our community. Learning that that had all been torn out really changed the calculus for me on this. And so there isn't a quick deploy option to serve the community. So then it's what's the next best use of these. I know I saw other ones of these for sale at one point in time. They weren't demanding very much. So Though that may be more staff time than they're worth. They have other use for storage of things for city, but if the highest best use of them is to get deployed, I don't, up in Eugene, then I guess I also see some value in closing that chapter in Cottage Grove. So that's where I stand.
Counselor Merryday.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also like to see them return to Lane County where they came. We did not buy them. They were a gift. And if they can be used currently for housing people in need of housing, then that would be a much better use than sitting and degrading in the UV. I did at one point do some research into pallet shelters, and they do have a very limited life, as city manager has indicated. When you disassemble them and reassemble them, there's only so many times you can do that and have them still retain their integrity. So I would be in favor of honoring the request by Lane County.
Anyone else? Oh, Ms. Conley.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I just had a question for staff. Is the transfer agreement that's presented the version that was signed last time when this was approved in June, or were there changes made to it?
It's my understanding that it's the same agreement, but we do have a representative, here from Lynn County. So, James, I'll let you just introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm James Yo. I'm with Lane County Health and Human Services. It's my understanding it is the same. It's St. Benny's adding to the capacity that they have at their site in Eugene.
Just going to draw a line under it because I had recommended changes last time around. Were those never implemented in the signed version?
Actually, I believe they were, yeah.
Oh, so that's not this one. So I have a motion. If anybody would like to consider one, I could suggest a motion that then somebody could say so moved. Is this still on? Yes. So I move to approve the transfer of city's remaining pallet shelters to Lane County via St. Vincent de Paul and authorize the city manager to sign the transfer agreement in a form approved by the city attorney.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Concerns from council? Counselor Stottlemyre.
We are going, well, some of us went and did a little bit of side work, and we were given the green light to offer the city employees a lunch this Thursday. So if anybody on the council would like more information about joining our group, it would be fun to have. The more the merrier.
You want to say what time?
It starts at noon. It's at the golf course, Middlefield Golf Course. Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Counselor Wilson.
Yes. And actually, Mr. Holland could probably speak a little bit on this as well. As the advisor to the school board, it is my understanding that they have filled the vacant seat that was on the school board. It came down to a coin toss as the method of breaking a 3-3 tie that seemed to be in complete impasse. So. To restate what he just said for the record is that the coin toss was approved by the Lane County Elections Board as a tie-breaking method.
Anyone else? Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council. So there are a couple of things I had. So with getting rid of the remaining pallet shelters at the 99 site, well, former 99 site, I'd like to see us look at putting that lot of property up for sale now. Same thing with the former North Douglas site property. Or maybe look at relocating the Dust Till Dawn site to that property and then selling the North 12th Street site. Or looking at that for a potential spot for the new skate park instead of in Coynier Park. And then we definitely need to look at addressing some sort of overnight no parking or something for North 16th Street next to Safeway. Allow parking during the day, during business hours. I don't know if we can do something like that. I know normally it's the opposite, to where they can't park during certain hours during the day, but they can park overnight. And then now that we're not in the urban renewal district section of this meeting, I'm not necessarily a fan of the timeline that this is being pushed through, kind of with the budget committee timeline. I know why it's being pushed through, because we're limited on time. Because we want to receive monies by the end of the year. This all has to be done by that timeline. But in a slight opposition to like what Mr. Stewart had touched on, this could have been brought up 6 months ago. This could have been brought up 4 months ago, but it wasn't. I'm really not a fan of rushing through something to try to get done by a certain timeline, especially something like this where it might impact a lot of different people. So in a whole, as it stands, I'm not a fan of it. It's a rush job. So I just wanted to put my sense on that.
Counselor Sotomayor.
I concur about the timeline concern, but I also really like who gets to decide if we move forward with that timeline. And one thing that I think it would be easiest for me to favor in things is just say, let's look at it for next year. If that is, but it would be wonderful if things fell into line and we saw all the positives and we could move forward with this. So I listened also to, we have the power to change that timeline or just vote against it.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Like the idea of revisiting the layout of the sites that we have designated. We had a individual come in and discuss permit parking lot out there. I think if we heard from staff, if that would better serve the maintenance side of things, the overall access to the trail, all of that, I think I'd be happy to revisit what makes sense now. I do feel that was a bit monumental of a decision to move those out. That was going to free up some space to think about what now. So I appreciate you bringing that up. If I was sitting in the audience listening to me, I would go, wait, you didn't answer the question that Mr. Holloman asked. And no, I haven't spoke to any developers or really anybody with any financial interest, at least that I'm aware of, that spoke to that regarding the urban renewal plan. But I have interest in seeing this community really thrive. I want to see that happen. That means change in some way. So let's talk about it over the next few days that we have to do that before we make a decision. I would like to revisit on the topic of the shelters and everything, the backyard tent ordinance. Love to do a kind of a retrospective on that. Have some experience that's gone. Do we need it? Does it need to be modified? Is it still serving the community? What are our policies and procedures around it? Street parking, happy to revisit that as well. I want to echo Mr. Secord's sentiments. What a fun event it was to be part of the mining event downtown. So much planning and work went into that. Really want to commend Georgia Haskell and the chamber. Thoroughly impressed with just how fast she went about getting information, and then the community showed how the best of they work, how quickly they produce things. The vetting, the CVs that were required, the kind of the resumes for miners, I just have to laugh. I'm like, I'm not aware of an accrediting organization that accredits gold miners. It seems like that's almost an antithesis to some degree about just go out and hunt it. But part of the world record setting process was how do we, and it's great, that's why you want an organization that goes through that scrutiny to set it. That's why the record means something in part, was how do we prove that these are experts so they can actually be qualified to train all the people at the stations to have the proper technique. And but so many people were involved in that. City staff, thank you, Mr. Stewart, for doing that, and just that collaboration. I think that will live on. And that's in council. Appreciate that. So it's fun. And I believe that is all I have.
Anyone else? Counselor Merriday.
Well, I guess I need to make also a declaration. I've not received any, was not approached by any developer. I've not received any small denominations, a sealed envelope. I would be morally opposed to that. I was also very disappointed not to be able to participate in the world record. I was with the scout troop on our scout camporee, a date long established before the record attempt was established, and I was very torn, but I put my duty first. But I did help with some research and promotion with Georgia, because I thought it was a great idea, and I know that it's something that will live in history.
Counselor Sotomayor.
I apologize. I should say also I haven't received money, and I can't see how I would benefit from it other than as a citizen. If it goes well, we'll celebrate together, everybody, and everybody will benefit. And I just have to say, I was crazily impressed with everything that was very obviously brought into the gold mining record activity. But man, 300 and how many of the participants were happy standing there for I don't know how long, as we got our ducks in a row and got somebody who had a checklist that must have been very long from a world record organization to be happy with everybody. And then they had fun for 30 more minutes. And so our city just showed, and some companions from outside, I know, just what they would do to support a together effort. It really felt like a wonderful event. Thank you, guys.
And Mr. Holloman, I wasn't approached either. I'm positive. Yes. And I want to echo about our gold panning, and the C chords played an integral part. Thank you for that, and sharing your valuable skill set and gold. All right, Counselor Wilson.
Yeah, just echoing on the gold mining. I showed up at about 7:45 that morning to help Georgia with some of the last minute setup, and the first miners, people that wanted to participate, showed up at 8 o'clock, and they were actually from Tigard, but they have a claim around here, so they felt that they wanted to come in and be part of it. And then I think the next group came in from Salem, and then it was just it was an Oregon effort, not just a Cottage Grove effort. They all felt and saw the value of owning a record, and rubbing Australia's nose in it a little bit. So, it was a lot of fun. It was a great deal of fun. So thank you to everybody that helped with that.
Thank you. All right, well, Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, sorry, one more question for the city manager. So with the property lots that we've been able to sell now, where are we at with the revenue gained versus the debt on those properties? And what has that done to help kind of offset the money that we need to account for in our budget? Or to make up the difference, I should say.
Well, I don't have those numbers in front of me, and we can certainly provide them to you. But it's definitely, as you say, shrunk the difference. What I would suggest that we do is that in the next city council meeting, we'll provide you with a full accounting of what's happening with the industrial park.
Yeah, I'd just like to know, because I know we kind of came up with a rough number of roughly 500,000 that we need to kind of make up for this budget cycle. And then I know we did the one property for over 700,000, but I don't know how much debt service was owed on that or
yeah, but
that was all talked about. So
I don't want to mix metaphors here. The reduction that we're attempting is within the general fund. The money that was used to purchase the industrial property and that's now being reimbursed is the utility funds. So rather than just shooting from the hip, let me give you an actual accounting of that, of where the money came from and where the money is going back to. Okay. Does that make sense?
All right. So we do not need to revisit item A. So we're on to item B, continued discussion of police department funding.
Well, good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. While the PowerPoint's getting passed around to you, I don't want to belabor this, guys, but this is an incredible example of what we can accomplish when we work together. And to quote the mayor, it's amazing what you can accomplish when nobody cares who gets credit. So thank you to everybody who was involved in this. I think it was an incredible success. What I wanted to do this evening is just kind of continue our discussion about police department funding and also give you a bit of an update on our conversations with the county sheriff's department about dispatch services. To begin with, the goal that we've had from the beginning is we need to develop a long-term, sustainable, and stable funding plan for our police department. So what I'd like to do this evening really is three things. First, talk a little bit more about the police department budget. This is just a refresher. Talk about what a law enforcement utility fee is and how it could be utilized. And then also, like I said, give you a bit of an update on our contract negotiations with the sheriff's department for dispatch services. So our police department budget, the total amount is about $5.2 million. And if you throw in another $500,000, that's our library budget, you'll see where just about our entire property tax revenue goes. This is the same point we've made before, that a significant amount of the city's largest revenue stream by far, our property taxes, goes really to two basic programs. Now, we've also talked about a law enforcement utility fee. And just to give you some quick background on it, this is a separate fee that would be listed on people's monthly city water utility bill. The revenue from the fee is dedicated to whatever purpose the city council wants to dedicate it to. Many cities use it for law enforcement, if they have a city fire department. They use it for parks and recreation. Some even use it for streetlights. But the fee can be adopted by the city council, or it can be by a vote of the people. That's really up to the city council. If we were to adopt something like this, how you want to do it, whether you want to do it as just a vote of the council, or whether you want to send it to a vote of the people. Just to give you an idea from we've talked before, is if we were to implement a fee of $10 a month, this is just a number, it's not a proposal, but $10 a month would generate enough revenue for us to hire 2 new police officers, additional police officers, 1 a school resource officer, and a 2nd detective. And the chief can tell the story better than I can, but our current detective does an incredible job with the resources that she has available to us. And a 2nd detective would be a huge addition. We could also hire 2 community service officers, and we currently only have half of a community service officer. You've heard about what I call the quality of life issues this evening from folks speaking and also from council discussion. Community service officers are the folks who we use to enforce those quality of life issues. So again, this is a possibility of what we could do if we had the additional revenue. And finally, just wanted to touch on the issue of contracting for our dispatch services. You know, as we've discussed before, our South Lane Communications is almost $800,000 a year. And our goal was to try to reduce that cost by about $200,000 a year by looking for other alternatives and different business models for how we could handle dispatch. Our friends at Lane County have given us an estimate, and again, this is very preliminary, guys, of about $650,000 a year if they were to provide the service with us. So we're continuing to have that conversation with the county sheriff's department about possibly contracting with them. And just as a way to close this up, as we've talked about before, guys, we are not going to narrow that $500,000 gap in the general fund by nibbling around the edges. We've got to make some serious changes to our business model and the way that we do business. And this is one opportunity to do that. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have or any concerns.
Any questions? Councilor Merriday.
It's not so much a question, but something that our chief said at one of the meetings is that, you know, our police department is on fumes. And I think everyone in the community has a very strong interest in public safety, a very, very strong desire. We've been in a rebuilding process that started with replacing many of the components of the police department. We now have nearly a branched out staff, and whatever we can do to get funds there quicker rather than later, I would be very in favor of. So I would support a utility fee as a quick way to give an infusion where it's much needed.
Councilor Urban.
I appreciate the presentation. It's following up on the directives, budget process. Yeah, I have a knee-jerk reaction to additional fees. Don't know that we have explored all of the options. Maybe this is a near-term one. So strongly considering. I'm a little bummed about the utility thing. We are the things that we can't really change day to day. You can only turn your taps off and you're still going to have fees. Turn your lights off, you're still going to have a utility bill. You know, I feel the pain for trying to survive here in this town with limited opportunities and utility fee on top of this non-discretion. It's hard. It's hard to swallow. But strongly consider it. I want to float, I guess, an idea of a regional jail facility. As we're talking about possibly in the urban renewal kind of process. I'd like to see maybe some other jurisdictions. I think there's some in Washington that I was researching that have done it. There seems to be high demand, seems to be limited bed space, seems to be expensive. I'd like to at least explore feasibility. What if we construct a regional jail facility, and is that a revenue generating model that also pays for our existing services? Is there demand for it? What would those costs be? How would we fund it? I just encourage us to continue looking at options. And what's our timeline on, hey, we really, is it right now that we really need to make, these kind of decisions, or how much time do we have to weigh all the options?
Before we move on, we have a time check. Can we all agree? 15?
I'll talk fast.
Okay.
To answer your question directly about a timeline, city staff is planning that once we give you the second quarterly budget update, which will be in January, that's the point at which we will start working on the next year's budget. We're already working on it right now in earnest. And that's the point at which we'll be probably bringing to you a proposal to say, do you want to include this in next year's budget? Now, understand that if we were to include a utility fee in next year's budget, that's all it would be, is a number in a budget. City council would still need to take independent action to either adopt the fee or, send the fee to the voters. So that's a question you may, be addressing in early in next fiscal year. If we put it in the budget and say, here's the fee, here's what we're going to spend the money on. And both those numbers are in the budget, the council would still need to make an independent decision.
Councilor Urban.
Just add to that, the feedback that I have been receiving from the performance of the officers and the interactions with community have been confidence inspiring and seeing all the kind of goodwill of like, hey, these are excellent officers, good job, really serving the community. So I thank the chief for the leadership in that leads to these kind of decisions.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I do just want to comment a little bit on some of these numbers, because I know we hear over and over that the police department costs 5.1 million a year. That's what we budget. I've been here 2 years, so the level of service that you've seen as it has gradually increased from 23 to 24, now into 25, has never cost this city $5.1 million, because we haven't spent what's been allotted. So what you're seeing is significantly less than what is being budgeted. So I bring that up just for the value of what are you getting for a return on your investment. And when we talk about what do we need to do, we have the gap still that's there, right? So we have the money, the 5.1, but we know when we adopted the budget this year that the direction was, how do we not spend all of that money that was just allotted, right? The direction was 500,000 a year for the next 3 years. How do we make up that gap? Which is essentially saying, we're going to adopt the budget, but we're really asking you to not spend all of that and find other ways to either not spend it, cut, or generate revenue. So we talk about what can we get, and we hear all of the things, and it seems like every council meeting, there's members of the community that come in to talk about their frustrations with some of these quality of life issues, and we heard it again tonight. My fear is that if we don't do something to generate revenue, soon. It's not going to be, can we add back our school resource officer? Can we add one more detective? Can we add 1.5 community service officers? It's going to be, can we afford to maintain the level of service that we have now, which we continue to hear is really not acceptable, that we're doing better and that things are improving, but there's concerns in the community that we're not doing enough. So that's my fear. And what I don't want to do is overpromise and underdeliver. But we have come a long ways. We've done a lot. And there's what ultimately we're going to come to is a reduction in the services that we can deliver. So we're gonna kind of come to this plateau where we're just gonna say, this is what we're paying for. This is kind of as good as it gets for what we're paying. So, and I know I've mentioned this in the past, but until we have to define what do we want public safety, what do we want law enforcement specifically to look like? And then we have to figure out what's the funding mechanism and how do we do that? And if it means that, we have to generate revenue, there's only so many options to do that to have an immediate impact. So I guess I just want to put that out there. Food for thought, full transparency.
Thank you. Counselor Sotomayor?
Yeah, excuse me, in that name of sorting out the dollars talked about here, I was trying to sort that out myself. The idea that the budget committee asked movement on a percent of the budget, of the general budget. Am I correct in saying that what we are trying to do with this utility fee is not going to help that percent? This is something that we are following the pattern that we would like to bolster the city police budget, but this isn't going to replace the 5.1 million that is coming from property taxes. Is that correct?
Well, when we talked with there's a couple of things in there. Let me try to break it down. When we talked with the budget committee and subsequently the city council passed a motion to try to reduce the VIG between, what we're spending and what we're bringing in every year. And we arrived at a percentage that's roughly $500,000. We agreed that we would try to do that in two ways. We would do it by reducing our costs, but potentially increasing our revenue. And we talked about that tonight with the Urban Renewal Agency, that the Urban Renewal Agency potentially can provide us with additional property tax revenue, coming up from the bottom, coming down from the top, to reduce that percentage within the general fund. Picking that up and setting it aside for a moment. My vision for a utility fee is, if we're going to implement something like this, we need to be very crystal clear with the public what it is they're buying. For example, if you look at the city of Cresswell has a utility fee for law enforcement, and they use it to pay for a specific number of sheriff deputies, which they contract with Lane County for. It's very clear as to what the money's going for. There are other cities like the one I grew up in, Gresham. Gresham has a $15 a month fee on their utilities that goes to police, fire, and parks. And every year their budget committee fights over who gets what portion of that $15. It's not terribly transparent to somebody paying it every month what that money is going to go to. So if I'm going to make a recommendation to the council to implement a utility fee, I'm going to say, here's what the fee is, here's how much money it generates, and here's what we're buying for. Does that make sense?
All right. Well, go ahead.
Would next year's budget add whatever this is onto what we are currently viewing as the support for the police department?
Like I tried to indicate earlier, once we have completed the second quarterly budget report to the city council in January, at that point, we'll start working in earnest on next year's budget. We could include a utility tax, and we could include the specific programs that that tax or fee or whatever you want to call it would pay for in the budget. But all it is numbers at that point. And if it's approved by the budget committee and approved by the city council, the budget, it's just numbers. There would have to be a separate action by the city council to either implement the utility fee or to send the utility fee to the voters. And once that fee is in place, then we could use it for these additional officers.
All right, Council Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council. So I just got to say, I'm not necessarily in favor of imposing a additional fee onto the residents of our community. Especially due to the fact they already have to eat any increases to their power bill, their gas bill, inflations on their fuel costs. I would like to see this go before the voters of our community. And if they're in favor of it, then moving forward, instead of just here, have another fee. We already do that with the water rate. So I definitely would not be in favor of this unless they voted on it. And then the other fear is the option that might get taken away at some point, possibly if there's a major change in council or something like that. And then we're kind of straddled with, now we have this much kind of taken away. I don't know if that's even possible to where we can implement a fee and then that fee can be removed at some point.
Are you asking?
If kind of not.
Let's say if a council were to implement a utility fee, and then another council 2 years later were to say we want to remove the utility fee, they certainly can. That's why I want to make it as clear as I can that what you're buying with this utility fee. And so if the fee is eliminated, then that's what we're no longer paying for.
So should we move the next item to the next meeting?
Let's move Corner Park to the next meeting.
All right. Report from the city manager.
So
that's it?
Yep, that would conclude my report.
Okay. And anything from the city attorney?
No, just congratulations. What an incredible thing to be in the Guinness Book of World Records. And I can't tell you the joy my staff took from that. I did have one little follow-up. I'm not sure that staff is clear. I heard one counselor ask for follow-up on private yard camping, street parking, maybe even a regional jail facility. That was one counselor, so that's not sufficient direction for staff to actually act on it. And I don't know if staff wants clarification. I know that I'm not going to do anything unless staff asks me to, but staff might not start work on that without.
Do we have a consensus? Yes.
Let me just put it this way. We will bring you back options. And by that, I mean that Faye, Chief, City Attorney and I need to put our heads together. And so it may take a little while for us to do that, but we will come back with some options.
Thank you. Well, if there is nothing more, this meeting is adjourned. So